The timeless journey of the moth orchid, a 5-year odyssey. Prologue, the unexpected arrival of a tropical dream. My journey with the magnificent Phalaenopsis began not in a lush botanical garden, but with a humble specimen purchased from a local grocery store. Like many, I was captivated by the elegant arch of its flowering stem and the delicate, butterfly-like blooms. It was a fleeting, beautiful decoration, yet, as its flowers eventually faded, a profound curiosity took root. Was this just a disposable splash of color, or a living being with a history and a future? This simple question led me down a path of deep inquiry, transforming a casual hobby into a multi-year project of scientific and emotional discovery. I was no longer just a gardener, I was a custodian of a living legacy. Determined to understand the intricate secrets of this seemingly simple plant. The name Phalaenopsis itself tells a story. It is derived from the Greek words phalaina, meaning moth, and opsis, meaning like, a tribute to the striking resemblance of its flowers to a moth in flight. To truly appreciate this plant, one must first understand its place in the grand hierarchy of the botanical world. It belongs to the vast and diverse Orchidaceae family, a classification that places it within the plantae kingdom. The Tracheophytes, the Angiosperms, the Monocots, and the Asparagales order, while a more traditional, older taxonomy places it in the Magnoliophyta phylum and Liliopsida class. The modern classification reflects a continually evolving understanding of plant relationships. This genus, which includes approximately 80 species in the wild, is a native of the tropical and subtropical regions of Southeast Asia and northern Australia. Its natural habitat is a testament to its specific needs. It thrives in warm, humid climates with consistent temperatures ranging from 66.2 to 82.4 degrees Fahrenheit, 19 to 28 degrees Celsius, and high humidity levels of 50 to 80%. Found predominantly in the lower canopies of tropical forests in countries like China, Indonesia, the Philippines, and New Guinea. Phalaenopsis prefers shady areas, protected from the scorching intensity of direct sunlight. One of the most remarkable things I learned about my orchid was its unique growth habit. Unlike most plants grown in soil, Phalaenopsis is an epiphyte, meaning it grows on the trunks and branches of other trees, or a lithophyte, growing on rocks. Its roots are not for nutrient absorption from the soil but are an ingenious system for anchoring the plant and, surprisingly, for photosynthesis. This fundamental characteristic of its morphology, its short, robust stem, fleshy leaves, and monopodial growth habit, is a blueprint for its entire care regimen, and a crucial piece of knowledge for any aspiring grower. Part 1. Months 1 to 6. From protocorm to plantlet, a foundation of life. My story, a jar of dreams. My journey with a single, mature plant transformed into a deeper scientific pursuit when I decided to grow an orchid from its very beginning. I acquired a small glass flask, not of seeds, but of tiny, delicate plantlets suspended in a gelatinous, nutrient-rich agar medium. It was a jar teeming with nascent life, each microscopic protocorm a promise of a future bloom. The initial sight was a mix of awe and anxiety. I was holding a container of life that had bypassed the natural, fungal-driven germination process and was now my responsibility to nurture. The delicate act of deflasking, of liberating these fragile plantlets from their sterile womb, was a meticulous and thrilling challenge that set the tone for the journey ahead. The science, the unique biology of reproduction. The orchid's life journey begins in a manner fundamentally different from most flowering plants. The seed of a Phalaenopsis is a minuscule entity, lacking the endosperm, the nutrient-rich food source that other plants rely on for germination. In its native habitat, this biological limitation is overcome through a critical symbiotic relationship with a mycorrhizal fungus. This fungus provides the initial nourishment that allows the seed to germinate, forming a unique, undifferentiated structure known as a protocorm. The modern horticultural industry has found a way to bypass this reliance on nature, dramatically accelerating the orchid's life cycle through a process called artificial propagation. Researchers have developed sterile culture media that mimic the nutrients provided by the mycorrhizal fungus. These advances have enabled a significant reduction in the time from seeds sowing to first bloom, cutting the waiting period from a natural 4 to 5 years to less than 2 years in some cases. Two primary methods for this are the dry seed process and the green pod culture. The green pod culture, where the seed capsule is harvested before it naturally dehisces, is particularly advantageous. It reduces the risk of contamination because the seeds are never exposed to the open air and shortens the maturation period by 6 to 8 months. The ability to manipulate the life cycle in this way, turning a decades-long natural process into a few years of human-guided development, is a direct result of these technological advancements. Horticultural insight, the delicate art of deflasking. The transition from the protected environment of the flask to the outside world is the first critical test for the young orchid. This process, known as deflasking, requires a gradual acclimatization to the change in humidity and air circulation. A day or two before the final transplant, the flask lid is loosened, allowing the plantlets to slowly acclimate to their new environment. The physical act of deflasking is a delicate procedure. The plants are gently removed from the flask and their roots are rinsed in a fungicide solution to remove all traces of the agar medium and prevent fungal infections. After a brief drying period, the tiny plantlets are potted together in a small container, spaced approximately 1 centimeter apart. A high nitrogen fertilizer solution can be introduced on a weekly basis, and the initial potting medium is typically a fine-grade sphagnum moss or small chunk bark. A crucial step is to place the pot inside a larger, clear plastic bag, which creates a microenvironment of high humidity to prevent the fragile plantlets from drying out. This initial pot will serve as a nursery for the first 3 to 6 months as the plantlets establish their roots and begin to photosynthesize on their own. Part 2. Months 6 to 12. The first year of growth. The rise of the queen. My story. The quiet growth. After the initial deflasking, a period of quiet, meticulous observation began. I watched over the small pot, waiting for signs of new life. The first sign was the appearance of new root tips, a vibrant green against the silvery backdrop of the established roots. With each watering, I noticed a change in the root color, from a silvery gray to a plump, emerald green. This visual cue became a silent language between me and my plants, a reliable indicator of their needs. The first new leaf, slowly unfurling from the center of the crown, was a moment of profound satisfaction, signaling that the plants had successfully transitioned and were on their way to becoming a robust and independent organism. The science, the anatomy of a moth orchid. The Phalaenopsis genus is characterized by a monopodial growth habit, meaning the plant grows from a single, upright stem, adding new leaves and roots from its crown. This is in contrast to sympodial orchids, which grow horizontally with new pseudobulbs. The anatomy of a Phalaenopsis is elegantly adapted to its epiphytic lifestyle. The roots are perhaps the most fascinating feature. They are not simply for anchoring the plant but are a dual-purpose organ. The thick, aerial roots are covered in a spongy, white layer called the velamen. This layer is uniquely adapted to rapidly absorb atmospheric moisture and rainwater. The root's green, chlorophyll-rich tissue, which becomes visible when they are wet, actively participates in photosynthesis alongside the leaves. This incredible adaptation is why the plant's roots in its native habitat are exposed to the air and are not buried in dense soil. This is a key principle to remember for cultivation, as it explains why traditional potting soil is a death sentence for this plant. The roots of a Phalaenopsis are not designed to be submerged in a water-retentive medium, which would suffocate them and lead to fatal root rot. When the velamen is dry, it appears silvery gray, providing a simple yet perfect visual cue for watering. When rehydrated, the roots turn a healthy green. The leaves serve as the plant's primary water reservoirs. They are thick, leathery, and succulent, storing water and nutrients for the plant. Unlike many other orchids, Phalaenopsis species lack pseudobulbs, which are enlarged stems that store water and allow the plant to withstand periods of drought. This means that while they are sensitive to overwatering, they are equally intolerant of extended dry conditions and can become stressed if deprived of water for too long. Horticultural insight: establishing a stable home. Providing a stable environment that mimics the orchid's native habitat is crucial for its long-term health. The first year of growth focuses on establishing the core care principles. Light. Phalaenopsis requires bright, indirect light to thrive. An east-facing window is ideal, as it provides morning light without the risk of scorching. Shaded south or west windows are also acceptable, but a sheer curtain or moving the plant a few feet back is necessary to protect the leaves from the intense afternoon sun. Direct sunlight can lead to sunburn, which appears as black spots that later fade to a thin, tan-colored scar. Temperature and humidity. The plant's tropical origins dictate its temperature needs. Optimal daytime temperatures range from 70 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit, 21 to 29 degrees Celsius, with nighttime temperatures ideally staying above 60 degrees Fahrenheit, 16 degrees Celsius. Maintaining high humidity, between 50% and 80%, is equally important. This can be achieved by placing the potted plant on a tray of pebbles filled with water, ensuring the bottom of the pot never sits directly in the water. Air circulation. Good air movement is a non-negotiable requirement for Phalaenopsis. A stagnant, damp environment, which is common in many indoor settings, creates a breeding ground for fungal and bacterial diseases. A simple ceiling fan or small oscillating fan set to a low speed, aimed away from the plants, can provide the necessary airflow to prevent problems like botrytis and crown rot. Part 3. The growth years. Building the foundation for a bloom. Year 1 to 2. A cycle of repotting and nourishment. My story. The first big move. By the end of the first year, my young plants had grown considerably, their roots weaving together to form a tight, intricate ball within their initial pot. It was a sign of robust health and the signal for the plant's first major repotting. This was a moment of some apprehension. I had grown attached to the plant and feared damaging its delicate root system. The process of gently untangling the roots, removing the old medium, and pruning away any dead or soft tissue felt like a significant surgical procedure. The satisfaction, however, of placing the plant in a new, slightly larger pot with fresh, chunky medium was immense. It was a rite of passage for both the plant and the grower. A clear step toward a stable, healthy future. Horticultural insight. Repotting for a healthy future. Repotting is a necessary and critical part of Phalaenopsis care. It is not simply about giving the plant a larger home, but about refreshing the potting medium, which naturally breaks down over time. The ideal time to repot is in the spring, after the bloom has faded and as new roots with green tips are just starting to emerge. The plant should be repotted approximately every 2 years or when the medium becomes soft and soil-like, a sign that it has decomposed and is no longer providing adequate air circulation. The process requires a few essential tools: sharp, sterilized pruners or a razor blade, a suitable pot, and a fresh potting mix. The old medium must be completely removed from the roots, either by shaking it off or rinsing it with tepid water. Once the roots are bare, it is important to inspect them carefully. Healthy roots are firm and plump, ranging in color from green to silvery gray. Dead roots, by contrast, are hollow, mushy, or wiry and should be pruned away with a sterile tool to prevent the spread of disease. Selecting the right pot and medium is equally important. A pot that is too large for the root system will hold too much moisture, leading to root rot. The pot should just accommodate the roots without bending or wrapping them to fit. While both plastic and clay pots are suitable, clay pots are porous and dry out faster, which can be an advantage in preventing root rot. The potting medium must be airy and well-draining. The Missouri Botanical Gardens recommended mix includes 5 parts fresh medium-grade fir bark, 1 part horticultural charcoal, and 1 part sponge rock, perlite. Other common mixes include coconut husks and sphagnum moss. Fir bark provides a coarse, well-aerated structure, while horticultural charcoal helps neutralize the buildup of fertilizer salts. My story, the science of nutrition. After the repotting, I began a new phase, a regular feeding regimen. I moved beyond simple watering to a full-fledged nutrition plan. I learned that just as a balanced diet is crucial for my own health, it is essential for the robust growth and future flowering of my orchid. The simple act of adding a few drops of fertilizer to the water each week transformed the plant, deepening the green of its leaves and encouraging new, vigorous root growth. Horticultural insight, the science of nutrition. Phalaenopsis are moderate feeders when grown in modern media. Providing a balanced diet of essential nutrients is crucial for both vegetative and reproductive growth. The three primary macronutrients are nitrogen, N, phosphorus, P, and potassium, K, often represented by the NPK ratio on a fertilizer label. Nitrogen, N. Nitrogen is essential for vigorous leaf and stem growth, as it is a key component of chlorophyll, the pigment responsible for photosynthesis. A deficiency can lead to slow growth and pale, yellowing leaves. Phosphorus, P. Phosphorus is critical for robust root development and is the primary fuel for flower production. Potassium, K. Potassium contributes to the plant's overall health and hardiness, enhancing its resilience against stress, pests, and disease. Beyond the main three, the plant also requires secondary nutrients and micronutrients, such as calcium, magnesium, sulfur, iron, and zinc. For instance, magnesium is the central element in chlorophyll, and a deficiency can cause a distinctive mottling or splotchiness in the leaves. Calcium is vital for cell wall formation and pathogen resistance, and a deficiency often manifests in new, rather than old, growth because it is an immobile element within the plant. The most effective fertilizing strategy is the weekly method, where a highly diluted fertilizer solution is applied at every watering. This prevents the root burn that can occur with a concentrated dose. It is also important to flush the potting medium with plain water every fourth watering. This practice prevents the buildup of mineral salts, which can accumulate and eventually damage the delicate root system. Year 2 to 3. The controversial ice cubes and a scientific look. My story. The debate. My journey into orchid care inevitably led me to the great debate of ice cube watering. The method is a marketing gimmick, promoted by big box stores that sell orchids as a convenient, disposable flower. It is easy to see the appeal. A simple, once-a-week regimen that seemingly eliminates the risk of overwatering. However, my research and my understanding of the plant's origins made me skeptical. The idea of placing ice, a frozen form of water, onto a tropical plant's roots seemed fundamentally at odds with its native environment. The controversy, science versus anecdote. The controversy surrounding the ice cube method is a fascinating case study in the conflict between marketing, anecdotal evidence, and scientific research. On one side, many experienced growers vehemently oppose the practice. They argue that the cold temperature of the ice shocks the roots, a stressor that a tropical plant is not naturally equipped to handle. The method is also criticized for its inadequacy. The slow melting of the ice does not properly saturate the medium or flush it of the fertilizer salts that can accumulate over time. The consensus among many experts is that this method is a flawed marketing strategy designed to make orchids seem like a disposable product. On the other side of the argument is a recent scientific study that sheds new light on the matter. This research found that ice cube irrigation had no detrimental effects on the quality or display life of potted Phalaenopsis growing in a bark medium. The study recorded the lowest temperature in the bark media during irrigation at approximately 11 degrees Celsius, 51.8 degrees Fahrenheit, well above the freezing point that would cause cell damage. The temperature of roots in direct contact with the ice cubes only dropped to about 4 degrees Celsius, 39.2 degrees Fahrenheit, a temperature the roots can tolerate. This seemingly contradictory information highlights a deeper issue. The core problem with the ice cube method is not the cold itself, which the plant can seemingly tolerate. but rather the method's fundamental failure to address the complete needs of the plant. A proper watering session should thoroughly drench the potting medium, allowing water to flow freely through the pot to flush out accumulated salts. The ice cube method does not provide this necessary flushing and can lead to a buildup of harmful minerals over time. Thus, the method's failure is not in its immediate effect on the plant, but in its inability to provide a complete, long-term care solution. The method's appeal is in its convenience, but it is ultimately an incomplete approach that neglects the core principles of proper orchid husbandry. Part 4. Years 3 to 5. The moment of glory. The first bloom. Year 3 to 4. The promise of a flower spike. My story. The knobby, mitten. The most thrilling moment of the entire journey came with the appearance of the first new flower spike. After years of dedicated care, the plant suddenly sprouted a new, upward-growing root. But this one was different. It was flatter than the others and had a knobby, mitten-like tip. This tiny, unassuming growth was the long-awaited signal that all my efforts were about to pay off. The feeling was a mix of triumph and anticipation. I carefully staked the emerging spike, guiding its arching growth to ensure it would support the weight of the future blooms. It was a moment that transformed the plant from a simple green specimen into a work of art in progress. The science, the trigger for flowering. The initiation of a flower spike is a physiological process triggered by specific environmental cues. For most Phalaenopsis hybrids, the most critical factor is a sustained drop in nighttime temperatures. A consistent period of cooler nights, with temperatures between 55 and 65 degrees Fahrenheit, 12 to 18 degrees Celsius, acts as a signal to the plant to transition from its vegetative growth phase to its reproductive growth phase. This temperature change effectively tricks the plant into believing its life cycle may be ending, thus forcing it to expend energy on reproduction. The new spike should emerge approximately 1 month after the cool period begins. A common and heartbreaking problem during this phase is bud blast, or the sudden dropping of buds without blooming. This can be caused by a variety of environmental stressors, including rapid temperature fluctuations, low humidity, or changes in light. Maintaining a stable, consistent environment once the spike has appeared is the best way to prevent this common issue. Year 4 to 5. The grand display. My story. The first bloom. After what felt like an eternity, the first bud slowly unfurled. It was a quiet and majestic opening, revealing the delicate, pristine petals of a moth orchid. The moment was the culmination of years of patient observation and care. I stood in awe, knowing that this single bloom was the result of a long, interconnected journey that began as a microscopic protocorm in a flask. It was more than just a beautiful flower. It was a testament to the plant's resilience and the slow, rewarding pace of nature. The science, unique species and blooming habits. Phalaenopsis flowers are renowned for their longevity, often lasting for several months. Their appearance can vary dramatically between species and hybrids. For example, P. bellina produces highly fragrant, waxy, star-shaped flowers that bloom sequentially from the same spike, meaning the plant does not need a rest period to rebloom. The flowers have a distinct citrus scent and feature buttery green petals with a deep fuchsia or violet base. In stark contrast, P. schilleriana is famous for its arching sprays that can bear up to 250 fragrant pink, mauve, or white flowers at once. This species also features beautiful elliptic leaves that are mottled with silver gray on the top surface and flushed with purple on the underside, making it an attractive plant even when not in bloom. During the flowering period, it is important to continue a consistent care regimen. Watering should be done carefully to avoid getting water on the flowers, as this can lead to spotting. Fertilizing frequency should be reduced, as the plant is no longer in a period of active vegetative growth and over-fertilizing can cause bud drop. Part 5. The cycle continues. Perennial life and propagation. Year 5 and beyond. Reblooming and propagation. My story. A new beginning. The long, beautiful show of flowers eventually came to an end. Petals withered, faded, and fell, and the flowering spike began to turn brown. For a new gardener, this moment can feel like the end. But for me, it was a new beginning. I knew that my orchid was a perennial, a plant that would live for many years and rebloom annually with proper care. I now had a choice to make about the spent flower spike. A decision that would influence the plant's future growth. Horticultural insight, post-bloom management. After the flowers fade, the grower has two primary options for the spent flower spike. The first school of thought recommends cutting the entire spike off at its base. This practice allows the plant to conserve all of its energy for vegetative growth, building a stronger root system and new leaves in preparation for an even more spectacular bloom in the future. The second option is to prune the spike back to just above a node or a joint on the stem. This can encourage a new side shoot to grow from that node, leading to a new, smaller spray of flowers within weeks. While this provides a quicker rebloom, it draws energy from the plant, potentially resulting in fewer and smaller flowers in future cycles. For robust, healthy plants, a grower may choose this option, while for a struggling plant, it is best to cut the entire spike to allow it to recover. In addition to flowering, Phalaenopsis has another, more fascinating method of reproduction. The plant can produce a keiki, Hawaiian for baby, a small plantlet that grows from a node on the flower spike or from the base of the plant. The presence of a keiki can sometimes indicate that the mother plant is under stress and is attempting to ensure its survival. Horticultural insight, propagating with keikis. A keiki is a clone of the parent plant, a perfect genetic copy. When the keiki has developed its own root system with at least a few leaves and roots that are 2 to 3 inches long, it can be separated from the mother plant. This requires a sharp, sterile knife or razor blade to cut the plantlet just below its root tissue. A fungicide can be applied to the wounds on both the mother plant and the keiki to prevent disease. The new plantlet can then be repotted in a small, 4-inch container with fresh potting medium. A newly separated keiki can take up to 3 years to reach maturity and produce its first bloom. Part 6. The Unseen Threats, a Gardener's Guide to Prevention and Treatment. My story, learning to adapt. No matter how meticulous the care, a gardener will inevitably face challenges. Pests and diseases are a natural part of cultivation, and they provide an opportunity for deeper learning and adaptation. My first encounter with a pest infestation was a moment of panic. The tiny, white, cottony masses on the leaves seemed to appear out of nowhere. I had to pivot from proactive cultivation to reactive problem-solving, a test of my patience and knowledge. The science, a comprehensive overview of threats. A strong, healthy orchid is the best defense against pests and diseases. However, infestations and infections can still occur. A large number of Phalaenopsis health issues, from root rot to botrytis and some pest infestations, stem from a single root cause: a lack of proper air circulation and overwatering. When confined to a pot with stagnant, moist conditions, the plant's roots, which are adapted to be exposed to the air, are deprived of oxygen, creating a perfect environment for pathogens. This means that a singular care principle, good air circulation, is a preventative measure for a multitude of common problems. Pests, mealybugs and scale. These are sucking insects that can infest the leaves and stems of the plant. Small infestations can be treated by wiping the pests off with a cotton swab dipped in isopropyl alcohol. For more severe cases, a drench with a systemic pesticide like imidacloprid can be effective, as the plant absorbs the chemical through its roots and kills the pests from the inside out. Aphids. These insects attack new growths and flowers and can transmit diseases. A simple jet of water can wash them off, or a horticultural soap can be used for more persistent problems. Fungal and bacterial diseases. Root rot. This is the most common and often fatal ailment for Phalaenopsis. It is caused by a fungal infection that thrives in overly wet, poorly draining potting media. The signs of root rot are discolored, soft, mushy, or hollow roots. The only treatment is to remove the plant from its pot, prune away all infected tissue with a sterile tool, and repot it in a fresh, well-draining medium. Botrytis, also known as grey mold or petal blight. Botrytis is a fungal disease that causes small, brown spots on the flowers. The fungus thrives in cool, damp, and stagnant conditions. Once the spotting occurs, there is no cure, and the affected flowers should be removed to prevent the spread of spores. The best control for botrytis is prevention through good air circulation, sanitation, and avoiding getting water on the flowers. Bacterial soft rot. This disease appears as water-soaked spots on the leaves that quickly spread, causing the tissue to become mushy and brown. If caught early, infected tissue can be removed with a sterile tool, and the wound can be treated with a fungicide or hydrogen peroxide to prevent secondary infections. Environmental damage. Sunburn. Too much direct sunlight can scorch the leaves, leading to black or tan spots. Cold damage. Exposure to low temperatures or watering with cold water can cause the plant's tissues to collapse, resulting in a water-soaked, wilted, and browned appearance. The plant's reaction to cold stress can be subtle and may not appear for several days after the initial exposure. The symptoms can be confused with other diseases, but a careful examination of the environment will usually point to the cause. Conclusion. A timeless companion. My 5-year journey with the Phalaenopsis was more than just a horticultural endeavor. It was an exercise in patience, observation, and intellectual curiosity. It taught me that a plant is not a static object but a dynamic system in constant dialogue with its environment. I learned that its magnificent flowers are not just a fleeting display but the culmination of a long, interconnected biological process. I learned to look beyond the convenience of a mass-marketed product and appreciate the intricate adaptations that have allowed this incredible plant to survive and thrive. The lessons were as much about the plant as they were about the gardener. The journey reminded me that a lack of an immediate reward does not mean a lack of progress. The quiet months of vegetative growth, the subtle shift in a root's color, and the slow unfurling of a new leaf were all small victories that laid the foundation for the grand spectacle to come. The moth orchid, in its quiet resilience, teaches a timeless lesson, with a deep understanding of its needs and a commitment to nurturing its natural rhythms. It is not just a passing decoration but a timeless companion that will reward your patience with beauty, year after year.